Hello, mi gente. I am Dr. Xiomara Rivera Pagán, and this is LUPA Talks. I'm hoping to do this on a weekly basis. I was doing blogs before. The blogs are still going on, so you can catch those at lupatalks.com. But at the same time, we have some live virtual sessions that have been popping up. We've also have some actual live events, some sip and speaks, and there's been some common questions, common themes. I thought, what better way to actually speak to those themes in an accessible way than this longer form space. So I will be on a weekly basis coming here in order to share frequently asked questions, questions that pop up for you guys, or all of the themes that LUPA Talks focuses on. For those of you who are new, LUPA Talks is a space where we focus on our understanding of language. LUPA stands for Language Understanding for Pride and Action. My hope is that we focus on ways that we can understand more about language so that we can feel more confident and then actually use our language. The values or the pillars of LUPA Talks is that your language is perfect just as it is. There's nothing that you need to change, but at the same time, the more that you learn about how language is learned, the more confident that you can feel so that you can build your proficiency, so that you can connect more directly with your community, with your culture, with your family. And number 3 is doing so in community helps us feel seen and heard and validated in our unique experiences. LUPA Talks specifically is for anybody who's interested in any of those topics, but I really want to make a space and a home for heritage language learners. So there's a lot of spaces for folks who are learning language to travel or learning language just for fun, and those spaces really focus on tips and tricks and how to make it quick. And this space is not that. It's actually focused on understanding what's happening in our brain and in our body so that we can really feel confident and comfortable to go back in when language expectations might feel a little overwhelming. Because for heritage language learners, for those of us who grow up speaking another language at home in addition to English, we have certain expectations that either we have for ourselves, that our family has for us, or that society has for how we should be speaking and using our language. And the reality is that our opportunities and our needs for learning our home language, that language that we have experience listening to and maybe even practicing speaking, it's very different from somebody who is learning a language for fun or for the first time. There's a lot of emotions that come up in our experiences as heritage language learners. And so I focus specifically on heritage language learners. I focus specifically on heritage Spanish learners, and I focus specifically on Puerto Rican Spanish heritage language learners, because that's my experience. My name is Dr. Xiomara Rivera Pagán. I identify as a proud Boricua in the diaspora. I was born on the island, grew up more outside of the island, and so I had to navigate these questions about language and identity and what does it mean to be Spanish speaking enough and what does it mean to be Puerto Rican enough. And so I'll share more about my journey in another video, but after reconnecting with my language and my culture, after almost 20 years of teaching Spanish from pre-K all the way to adults, after years of working on my doctorate that was focused on educational language policies and how systems sometimes support and sometimes oppress, especially heritage language learners who have robust language ability, I thought I wanted to create a space like LUPA Talks that focuses on supporting our community and feeling confident and comfortable in understanding our unique skill set and how to engage in those conversations to connect with our language, our culture, and our communities in a way that is joyful and that is constructive. So this is not a place where you're going to get those tips and tricks and hacks and grammar drills. There are plenty of places that you can get that somewhere else. This is a place where I am going to talk about how does your brain and your body feel and work in order to respond to language scenarios where you're going to ideally practice your language and build on your proficiency, knowing that there's nothing that you need to, that your language is perfect just as it is. And at the same time, if we want to connect with our families and our culture and our community, that we want to increase our Spanish proficiency. So something that's really important, in this space I will be using Spanglish. I believe in Spanglish, it is my favorite language. Si puedo hablar en un idioma, va a ser en Spanglish, because I most free flow through Spanglish. If that is not something that resonates with you, go somewhere else. Porque aquí se habla en Spanglish, lo que se me ocurre. And at the same time, I want to make sure that we understand that our goal is to use Spanglish as a tool in order to increase our Spanish proficiency. So a lot of folks really focus in on, no, pero si habla Spanglish, no sabe ni esto ni el otro. If you're using Spanglish, then you don't know one language or the other. And the reality is that that's not true. That it is this beautiful, rich skill that's called translanguaging. We'll talk about that in another video. But that's the point of this space, right? The point of this space is not for the tips and tricks, sino para entender más, to understand more about how our brains are not limited by our translanguaging ability, but actually supported by. So this is a pro-Spanglish zone. This is a supportive zone. This is a space where I want to create a community that is coming together in order to support one another, in order to connect with one another, in order to ask questions, in order to engage in a dialogue about how do we support better listening, how do we support language diversity, how do we support the fact that if you say something one way and I say something another way, how do we create curiosity around that instead of judgment? This is not a language judgment. That curiosity is something that you want to engage in. If you want to learn more about my experiences, my expertise, I highly encourage you to engage in the dialogue. Introduce yourself in the comments. I would love to know more about where you are, what your experiences are, what your questions are, so that is what I cater my content to. I want to be able to answer more questions and also to uplift our community by having us understand more about how we are not lacking anything, how we have everything that we need, how we are Spanish speaking enough, we are Puerto Rican enough, or we are X enough, and we have always been. And this space is hopefully giving us some of that vocabulary, some of that understanding, so that when people challenge that, because the reality is that 100% of people have emotions and opinions about language, but very few people actually study it. Less than 20% of people actually study linguistics or language education. And so this space is to demystify some of them. And so there are other places where you can learn the actual tips and tricks and grammar, This space is for us to dialogue, to uplift each other, to connect with each other, to speak to the Spanglish brilliance that is in our brain. So please, in the comments, let me know who you are, where you're from. We also have Spanglish sessions virtually on Tuesdays. We also have a WhatsApp group where we have challenges, less than 15 minutes, where you can connect with each other, write to each other, voice note to each other, but we're essentially asking questions and celebrating all that it is to be Spanglish speaking and brilliant. And I look forward to talking more about all of these topics with you all. You can follow on all the socials. You can like, subscribe. Ya tú sabes cómo es. Hasta la próxima. Un abrazo, mi gente.